Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. And you can't get much more practical, creative, and sort of fingers in so many pies as producing. So we are delighted this week, or I am actually. Amelia will be joining me after the fact to discuss producing and also getting films into South by Southwest Film Festival. And we'll also hear a little bit behind the curtain of how her film Pretty Problems got made. So without any further ado, welcome to the show, Katya. How's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us from across the pond as well.
Yeah.
So I think you are the first overseas guest we've had on the Young Film Academy podcast, which is very exciting.
Yeah, what an honor. Oh my God.
No, it's amazing. And you know, we love hearing from people that are involved in all different aspects of production. So we've spoken to some amazing cinematographers, composers, and some producers as well, which would put you in that category as well. I know that you have done other roles. Mm-hmm. I know of, but is producing? Would you say is that your main forte? Was that your way into film, or have you sort of found producing?
I always wanted to be a producer ever since I was 8 years old, which is crazy. But at 8 years old, I was like, I'm going to be a film producer. And
not many people at 8 know what that is, right?
Yeah. It was a little bit surface level because I just had met a film producer and I thought she was really cool. And so I was like, I'm going to do what she does. She's so cool. But I also think that, you know, with producing, you're sort of in charge of everyone, and you are sort of a lot of the person kind of like giving orders and making sure that the ship kind of is steered correctly. And so it was really important to me that I understood every single job. So I worked in the grip department. I majored in cinematography and the camera department and the lighting department. I worked in a post house. It was very important to me that I understood to a very detailed level every single job on a film set, so I could talk to people and make decisions that I know are accurate.
Yeah, and that stops people within those departments like trying to speak technical jargon and make up stuff just to sort of swindle things and get their way, which I know is a thing, you know, like sort of exaggerating.
Yeah, definitely. And I can always call people. And I remember I was in a meeting with a post team, and they were speaking so much jargon. Yeah. And at one point, person was like, "Oh yeah, Katya's probably lost by now." And I went, "I've worked in a post house for 3 years. I'm not lost. I'm still right here with you."
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's such an empowered position to be in. And I think that's the sort of producer that's going to be able to get things done. And also that means you can stay on top of, you know, budget and all sorts of different aspects of the production and make sure that they're not being pushed by those department heads just for the sake of, you know, allowing their department to shine, I suppose.
Right, exactly. You kind of understand what it actually takes to do something. And I also think the other side of it is if you're making a request, I know what the weight of that request is. I know if it's a small one or a big one, and I can ask it appropriately instead of just being like, "Yeah, can you just redo all the VFX of the scene? It'll take you an afternoon, right?" You know?
Yeah. Oh, that is amazing. Actually, I've freelance edited quite a bit on films, and sometimes you do get a lot of that, especially with post, where it's just change this little thing, and it's like, no. That is not a little thing. So I think that's amazing. It must, you know, make you sort of attractive to work with and for, I suppose, as well. Which does that help? Does that help you sort of bring talent and crew on board?
Definitely, yeah. Because I think that also within my experience on set, which is kind of not as common, but something that's very important to me is. I try to favor my time with the crew. So if there's 2 events happening where, you know, it happened on Pretty Problems a lot, where, you know, some of the producers and the lead actors would go to like a wine tasting, but the entire crew would want to hang out in the hot tub for the afternoon. And I would always hang out in the hot tub with the crew. And it's the same thing with like post.
I mean, that does sound like a fun evening.
Oh, it was awesome. But I did like make sure that I spent time with the crew and I knew everybody's names, and I could probably name every crew member of every project I've ever worked on. And I think it's just really important because it's people, and in my head, they're like dedicating their time to something that I really want to make. And so I want them to know how appreciative I am, but then also we end up becoming friends outside of the film. And then, with projects, it's much easier to be like, okay, like, do you want to hop on another project now? And, and then like, I know that they're, you know, like, you're always excited to work with a friend. So there's like this also level of like, you know, anytime we get to work together, we're very excited. And so I think that that's important. I think sometimes it's like something that could be taken for granted by a producer, where they might not dedicate that much time to doing that. But I think it's one of the most important things to do as a producer.
100%. And then it just, you know, it just builds your own reputation as well in the industry. It means that you're not sort of burning through the crew list book and running out of people to work with because you're sort of, you know, I mean, that's the other end of the spectrum completely, is to be, if you were like a severely problematic producer that no one ever wants to work with again. And I mean, I've, you know, touch wood, never worked with anyone like that, but I know I've heard stories of people that, oh my God, no, I just can't do it, sort of thing. But when you do have that relationship, and as you're saying, you then, when you crew up for the next film, you're building like a family, right? You're building a really nice sort of team of people that are your friends, that you know that it's going to be a fun time making that film, you know, and any time sort of away from home potentially, or like, it can be quite extended shoots that you go on, and you want that to be an enjoyable experience as much as possible. There's always going to be other problems that crop up. The last thing you want is like the people being the problems, I think, you know? Right,
exactly. And I think sometimes something that people don't realize is a lot of films are filmed traveling. And so, you know, you're spending 10 to 12 hours a day with this group of people. And then in a lot of cases, you might be spending a month where like they're the only people to talk to because you're in the middle of nowhere or something. And so I do think that, I think it's something that can be taken for granted, but it's, and also the main reason I wanted to join the film industry my whole life was, the people and how collaborative it is and how people oriented it is. And that was why I joined the industry. So much of my choices as a producer revolve around the fact that I'm like, I'm just here for the people. Like,
yeah, I think that's so important, actually. And I think, I mean, especially with producing, I think it's easy to think, oh, you know, well, I want to be an editor, so maybe I don't need to, maybe I want to be an editor because I like films, but I don't like people. But it's like, oh, I hate to break it to you. You're going to be dealing with a lot of people. No matter how many jobs in the industry may require you to be alone in a dark room, you need to have that interface. You need to be able to get on with people, and not even just get on with people. Hopefully you try and, you know, be a nice person, I suppose, because that's paramount to even illustrate your point, to even get your ideas across. You know, there's the communication skills, which I think are really key.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So I wondered, to you've touched on sort of understanding all these different aspects, but what does being a producer mean to you? Because, I mean, you know that being a producer can require a gazillion different things at any given moment. But is there like a core sense of what it means to you, or is it the collection of everything? And if so, what is that everything, I suppose?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I learned as a producer is that no one knows what a producer does. Even sometimes people like in the industry that I'm working with, like I'll do something, they'll be like, oh, you way overstepped. Like, that's not your job. And I'm like, it is quite literally my job. I did very much my exact job. And so I think that there's a huge misunderstanding of what a producer is. And I also think that there are different types of producers. I'm one specific type, but when people think of producer, they usually think of the executive producer who brings in the money, who might package the film a little bit, but then they sort of are very hands off and they're sort of like, go make it. Like, here's the money and go make it and go make me money.
Like the Jerry Bruckheimers who sort of turn up in helicopter for like one day just to sort of, with the goggles, just to see what's going on and be like, that's okay. Okay, guys, let's fly away now.
Yeah, they can't even last the whole day. They're like, oh, this is too long. They fly for like one scene.
They don't even land. They don't even land. They're just making sure everyone's working, making sure the ants are in motion.
Yeah. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's like the line producer who might not have any say in any of the creative or anything, but they will, update the budget and they will talk to all the unions and they might negotiate people's day rates and stuff like that. And they do a lot of the logistics and they only focus on the logistics. Whereas the main producer of the project, which there could be a couple of them, I'm usually brought onto a project sometimes even before the director is brought on. Like there's literally just a script. And depending on where the script is, very rarely, like the script will just be perfect. And you're like, wow, this is great. Let's just move forward.
Yeah.
More common, there's like some conversations about the script.
Holy moly. There's not a single thing I'd change in this script.
Wow. Way more commonly, there's a lot to change about the script. And and you kind of workshop that together. And then I usually help bring on the director. We'll look at people and just see who would work best for the project. And then they will often also have a lot of thoughts about the script. And then I also am usually part of the packaging side where we will figure out casting and we'll figure out, who should be in it. And then I start crewing the project and figuring out who should work on it. Sometimes usually, the director and I will pick the cinematographer, and then the cinematographer and I would pick the rest of the crew together. And then on set, and then I do a lot of line producing as well, like just within my role. So I do usually look at the script and look at the budget and make sure that everything is going to kind of run smoothly. And then on set, I'm usually watching them film, I'm watching the dailies, and I'm trying to make sure that whatever we're capturing is the vision that we all talked about and that is correct. And then also sometimes things might come up. I'm a very big believer in not going into overtime as a person. And so I tend to remove scenes from a day or remove scenes from a movie before I go into overtime. And so it's very important for me and the director to have like an open line of communication, because there might be something that is just not needed in the script. And we realize while we're filming it, we're like, oh, great, this scene is kind of irrelevant now. Let's just cut it. And, but with everything that happens, it's very important to make a decision that makes the movie better. That's a big saying that I have, which is like, if something's going wrong, don't fix what's going wrong, use it as an opportunity to make it even better than it would have been if things didn't go wrong. And so I'm usually on set trying to help make those decisions and help figure out like, okay, this happened or we lost this location or whatever. So how are we going to make this better? And then in post-production, I'm with the editors all the time, and I'm with the finishing house. And so I will make creative notes on all the cuts of the film and then work with the finishing house to like actually export the movie and deliver it to whatever festivals, whatever, distribution and all that stuff. And so I think that it is a very technical and creative role, which is very exciting because you get to always use both sides of your brain. But it is important to kind of know people's like the jobs. I think that it's so important for a producer to also be a writer, because, you're going to be making so many creative notes within your role, and people are going to be looking to you to make these creative notes. And so you have to kind of know what makes a good story, which is just making a lot of bad stories. that's like really all it takes.
That's literally one of my that's literally one of my sayings that I say, like whenever I like teach as well. I say to the kids, like, getting good at filmmaking is really just running out of mistakes to make.
Yep.
You know, you just you need a lot of bad films, a lot of bad decisions that you just go, okay, yeah, no, I'm not going to make those again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to have the mindset that you need to actually actively not make them. I think if you keep making them, then maybe there's another problem. But but definitely sort of you need that background of work, I think, behind you to really sort of hone your understanding of skills. But I also think it's amazing what you're saying of like really understanding story and exploring it so that you actually have a good understanding. You don't just assume that you do, because I think, you know, the last thing you want is a producer that maybe just thinks they know story but hasn't actually explored story at all, and then you're having creative fights without being able to actually have a decent conversation in that area, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think with every story and with every project, in terms of like simplifying it, I think that like one of my tactics as a person is, you know, there is almost like a heart or like a point to every story, and I always like see my role as like, I'm going to protect this heart, and that's my job. So whatever choice we make has to better this heart, and other things that might be fun and might be whatever, if it doesn't have to do with the heart, it's the first thing to go. And so I think a great example is Pretty Problems used to be like a horror comedy, and we had a lot of scenes where people were like running through vineyards with like rabid dogs and stuff like that. And I sort of was like, this is cool. This is really cool, guys, but we do need to cut like 20 pages from this script. And, you know, it's a relationship. It's a film about relationships and about you know, jealousy. And so maybe the rabid dogs are not as important to that. It's not serving that as well. I think that's the first thing to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it's not a rabid dog film, as it were, that's going to be then called Rabid Dogs, then maybe the rabid dogs are sort of surplus to it. The only sort of I know two other sort of producer titles, by the way, that are like, you get here co-producer and associate producer. And I was having a discussion with someone the other day about whether those titles actually mean anything, or whether that's just what sometimes. But do they mean anything concrete, or is it just that they would like to be credited in that way? Do you know what I mean? Like, is a co-producer maybe a producer that's just doing slightly less work, or how how do those names get thrown into the fray?
It's like a 50-50. So I think that, so I, just a side note of like my philosophy of film, I actually really love when actors take on more than an acting role. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And I constantly, every actor I work with, I just slowly encourage them to become directors. And so a lot of times an actor might get a co-producer credit because they might have done something like waived their pay or waived a certain amount of pay, and in that way supported the film. You know, in my opinion, if you're waiving your pay, you're essentially funding a part of the movie, because that money could have gone to you and now it's going to something else like equipment or lodging. And so you can often get a co-producer credit that way, or
Gotcha.
You know, if it's like kind of part of a negotiation. Same thing with an associate producer. It could be someone who just sort of helped you a little bit along the way, maybe made a connection for you, but their involvement was more just like a couple phone calls. Or an associate producer can be sort of a younger person who might be just a little bit too qualified to be a coordinator, but not quite qualified yet to be a producer. And so that's sort of like the middle ground of promotion between being a coordinator and being a producer or a project manager. Well, no, associate producer is sometimes above a project manager, but on Pretty Problems, there's a person who's credited as a co-producer who is Galileo Mondel. And so the way he got that credit was he just really was that guy. Like we would get a quote from a rental house and we would just call him and just read the quote to him on the phone. And he would go, give me like 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden in our email, we would just get a new quote that was like 25% of what the original quote was. And we don't know how he was doing it, but
wow. I need this guy's number. Like,
yeah, it was unbelievable. And he, there was a moment where our camera broke and he like came in and tried to help us sort of coordinate getting a new camera. And he donated one of his cameras to the project. So we did a 2-camera shoot. So he donated one of his cameras to the project.
Nice.
And he just like was the guy, like when we needed to finish the film, finishing is like the process of exporting and all that stuff. He's the one, he just called me. I didn't even ask. He just called me. He was like, I found you a post house. They'll do it for free. Like come by at this date at this time.
No way.
And so he just was,
wow.
I mean, he really made the project possible. And so, but he didn't really produce the film. So we were like, okay, we need to give him like the biggest thank you in the world. So we were like, co-producer. There we go.
Yeah. Nice. No, I think that's a lovely way of earning that.
Oh yeah, he worked very hard on that one.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about Pretty Problems. So this is a film. So it premiered. Did it premiere or did it screen at South by Southwest?
It premiered at South by Southwest. Yeah, because
I know the big festivals are often quite tight on that. They want that premiere status, right? And that is one of the biggest festivals.
Yeah, they. We essentially, that was like one of our deals with them was that we would premiere there if we got in.
Yeah,
and we're so happy because they, Janet, who is the director, well, formerly the director, she just retired. But she really championed us in a massive way. She gave us their biggest theater, which we were really actually nervous about. We were like, why are you doing this to us? And she's like, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. We're like, I don't think so. And then we ended up almost selling it out. And then we sold out every other screening for the rest of South by. And then she was supposed to introduce another film and she canceled on them and introduced our film because she really, really liked our movie, which was really just a huge pat on the back, especially because, we made the active choice to not have A-list actors in the film. We wanted to promote actors from this very specific acting studio. And that, that choice can often really negatively affect the distribution prospects of your film. And so the fact that Janet really went on a ledge for us and gave us the biggest theater and gave us a red carpet entrance, which is not common at South by Southwest. And she just really went all out for us. That really helped. And then we won the audience award. And that definitely helped us a lot.
Congrats.
And it was really exciting. And then we ended up winning a bunch of other awards at other festivals, and that also helped a lot. But in terms of the film, so essentially I used to work at this one studio and Michael worked at the same studio. And so that's how we met each other. And he sort of kind of reached out to me out of the blue and sort of was like, do you want to make movies together? Here's 7 movies on my slate. Because we had both just left that studio. And I was like, yes, I do. And so
that's a hell of an opportunity.
Oh, yeah. And so we started small. We started with this one film called Mirror Game, which is actually still doing its festival run right now. And Mirror Game went so well. And it's like the running joke is like, that movie should not have gone well. There's no reason that movie had gone well, but it went very well. And so afterwards we were like, okay, we're a really good team. Cause nothing went wrong and a lot should have gone wrong. And so
sure.
When he had sent me the 7 slates, which just means that like 7 scripts that he's willing to make immediately. Pretty Problems was in that was in that slate, and I had read it, and I was like, we have to make that movie. Like this script is like the best script I have ever read in my life. Like we have to make this movie
with or without the rabid dogs.
With or without the rabid dogs. And so when we finished Mirror Game, he came up to me and was like, so, you know, Pretty Problems is funded and it's ready to go, and we have a director and we want to make it. And I was like, let's do it. And so we immediately started working on that film, and it was crazy. I mean, like, I think the big ethos of that film was people just being very kind, and our main location, which is this massive vineyard with 5 mansions on it, was donated to us for free, and we got to film there for 3 weeks for free. And same thing with a bunch of our other locations.
Superb.
Yeah, they were just donated to us, and people are always coming up to us and being like, how did you do that? Like, that's amazing. And we were like, we just asked. Like, it, you know, sometimes you got to swallow your pride and like make that phone call, and the worst that can happen is they say no. And in our case, they just kept saying yes. It was the same thing with a lot of the music. You know, we put in this temp soundtrack, and we were obsessed with this temp soundtrack. And but then we were like, how are we going to afford these songs? It's not going to happen. And we just contacted every single musician, and they all just kept saying, yeah, sure. I mean, why not? You know, whatever. And so we were able to
Did you just pick like a really good day of the month? Like, did you time it with like a full moon or something? Like, is there a special trick?
I think part of it is that, you know, Michael and Britt, the other 2 producers, they are just the most wonderful people you would ever meet. I mean, they are just both a constant breath of fresh air and kindness and warmth. And I literally call Britt Mother Earth, because she's just Mother Earth. Like, she's just so wonderful. And I think when people are just nice, and on the other side, I think when your intention is, I love this movie, I really want to make this movie, and it's not like, I really love celebrities and I want to hang out with celebrities. You know, I think people can tell what you are approaching them with and from what context you're approaching them with. And I have found that when I have approached people with, I would do anything to make this movie because I really care about this movie, people will almost always jump on board. I think even, you know, Gary Rizzo, he is an Oscar award-winning sound design, very famous for Dunkirk and
amazing.
I'm trying to remember the one, not Interstellar. I think also Interstellar, but what's the one where it's like a dream within a dream? Whichever one that one is.
Oh, Inception.
Thank you. And Inception. I should have had it written on my computer. It's truly my fault. But he...
and you were like, look, there's no guns. There's vineyards.
But he sound designed our film. He just really loved the concept, and he really liked us, and he really loves Brit. And so he had sound designed something for Brit in the past, and he sort of was like, you know, if you guys want, you know, I can sound design this at Skywalker Ranch for you. And we were like, yeah, we absolutely would love that. Thank you. And
did you get to go there? Did you get to go to Skywalker Ranch?
So unfortunately, here's the most unfortunate thing. So we kind of were okay, so we didn't think we were going to get into South by Southwest. So we sort of were just like kind of taking our time, finishing the movie. And then we got the phone call, and we were like, we immediately called Gary, and we're like, okay, we're going to picture lock in the next 2 weeks. And then you got like 5 days to finish sound designing the whole thing. And he was like, okay, great. I think that's possible. Maybe, I don't know. And we're like, I think so too. I think this is great. We're all great. We're all in a good place. And so we sent it to him, and he was disappointed. He was like, well, I really want you guys to come down here. And he goes, well, here's the thing. You know, we're going to have to re-sound design it anyway once you get distribution. That's going to take forever. So how about after the festival circuit, you know, you guys come up here, we take some time, re-sound design it, and then, you know, we send it off to distribution. And we were like, perfect. And then we got distribution at South by Southwest, which was our first festival. And so we again had to call Gary, and we're like, okay, here's the thing. Again, we need to design the whole thing in like 5 days. Can you do that? I think you can do that. And so it was for very fortunate reasons that we couldn't go, but we thought that we would have like a month to, you know, really take the time, breathe with the film. But no, every single time we were like, oh great, we have like a 2 week deadline to re-edit and redo all the VFX and all the sound design for this film. And the VFX are, I think, sometimes people don't realize, like, the VFX for our film are very minor. It was very, an example is the address to the house was in a shot of the movie. You have to like go in and VFX the address out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, and like we changed a character's name at one point. So all the pieces of paper in the entire film that had the character's name on it, we had to go VFX a new name on all of the paper. And so people never realize that, like, no matter how much of like a grounded in reality conversational film you're making, there's so much VFX involved. I don't know why. It's the way the industry is. And so
100%, it ends up being small stuff, right? Just like, as you're saying, removing the odd thing here or there. And those shots do start to add up, and suddenly you do have quite a few per scene sometimes.
And so it was always like this mad dash, but it was like an exciting mad dash. We were always like, oh, okay, great, like we just got distribution, now we have to do these 400 things, but we're gonna do it and it's gonna be awesome and we're gonna feel great about it.
No, that's amazing. I mean, having a film show there, having it have that reaction and getting distribution straight off the back of it, I mean, that's just sort of a dream run for a film in a way, right? So I can only imagine that must have felt like sort of all the lights going green. Did it open more doors? Like, did it open more doors for maybe like the next few projects on the slate? I know you mentioned 7 films and stuff.
Yeah, so Michael and I are developing 3 projects together. I will admit Michael's the main developer of it. He is a creative genius. He's amazing, and I love working with him.
Yeah.
And same thing with me and Britt. And so, and like kind of the 3 of us together. And so what we found was, especially if I could give any advice to a young filmmaker, if you get into a festival, go to the festival. Just go. It doesn't even matter how small it is. The amount of managers and agents at top agencies that I know that literally look for backyard film festivals to find the next director and writer to sign into their agency, it's alarming. I mean, that is most of their job, is to find the most underrated backyard film festival playing weird shorts. And so a big thing for us was, it was great because South by happened at like the top of our festival tour that ended in, so that happened in March.
Yeah.
And our festival tour ended at the end of August. So it was long. It was a really long tour, and which was also great because I remember we got into a lot of festivals. Were
you traveling around with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we got to go to cool, like we went to Maui in Hawaii, which was awesome. And, we went to all these really amazing places. And then some of the festivals, we were the headlining film at the festival. And so it's like a different level of commitment, because if you're the headlining film, you really have to get there early and you have to go to everything and meet everyone.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we found was, at every festival, there were all these people who are very passionate about filmmaking, who are in positions to fund movies and to donate mansions and to do all those things. And so, we would go to to a festival and they would ask us, what's your next project? And we'd be like, oh yeah. So, our next project takes place at like, the Master Sommelier exam. And they're like, I know every Master Sommelier in like 7 different vineyards. You're like, oh, great, cool. And so it definitely helps, especially just being in person and meeting people.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, for me as a producer, a lot of directors go to these festivals, or it might be a director who's also playing at the festival and going to see other films. And, after the film, they almost always like would come up and talk to me and being like, hey, I have all these other projects, do you want to talk? Do you want to start a conversation? And so it definitely opens a lot of doors. And then especially if people like your film, that was a big thing that was really surreal to experience, which was that people really, really liked Pretty Problems. And so when people really, really liked it, and they liked us because we were very fun. And like I said, Michael and Britt, nicest people in the world. So they just really liked us, and they just wanted to take us out to drinks. They wanted to take us out to dinner. They wanted to talk to us because they liked our movie. We were nice people.
Lovely.
And then it just became, all of a sudden it was just things just kept lining up for other projects that we didn't even know if they would be possible. And then, of course, a lot of that stuff is publicized in a very massive way, like on Deadline and stuff like that. And so all of a sudden, people just come up from the woodworks. I started working in the industry when I was 16, but I was working as like a PA. I was working as like these smaller roles, and some EPs from the days from when I was 16, like, have reached out to me since and been like, hey, I've got some projects, like, you're really kind of killing it out there. And so, it's just funny how that stuff works, but it kind of all collaborates like that.
No, that's amazing. It also shows how important that sort of early time is, or like just the time that you do put in to, connections or work that maybe you think this isn't going to go anywhere, but actually what you're doing is potentially creating relationships that will come back into play later on. Oh, yeah. And the better you sort of meet and connect with those people and try to put yourself out there is only going to set you up as you're experiencing now, right? Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, there's no such thing as a wasted time or a wasted moment in this industry. Even if, if you're working on a job and you really hated it and you don't like the finished product, or even like you directed your first thing and it turned out really bad, something has come out of that, either people that you met or a learning opportunity or something. And the amount of times where it was like, I worked on this project, it was crazy, it was mayhem, I had to sacrifice so much to work on it, and then 10 years later, it has given me my next 3 projects, and I don't even remember the name of that project. Like, it's crazy how much that works. And then I even tell people, like, even in times where you're not getting that much work, which happens, and it happens to the best of us, it doesn't matter how high up you are, it doesn't matter how experienced you are, like, you're going to have moments where you're going to have a hard time getting work. And even in those moments, I always say that's a perfect time to start honing in on skills that you don't know very well. Like, if you don't know anything about VFX, like maybe open Blender for the first time and just poke around and like learn about it. Or if you're a writer, that's the perfect time to like write out as many scripts as you can, develop as many ideas as you can, because you'd be shocked by what might happen, where you might end up on a set now and a person there might be looking for another project, and you can say, oh my God, well, I have a script, do you want to read it? And it's just really, I mean, I even saw it with my friend, he had been frustrated with his like directing sense, but he never stopped making stuff, even if it was with a cell phone, even if it was just writing, even if he just never stopped making stuff. And all of a sudden he came with me to South by Southwest, and all of these agents and managers are like, oh my God, you're so cool. Like, you're such a nice person. Send me all your stuff. And he had stuff to send. Yeah. He could be like, here's all the stuff I've been working on the past 6 months. And I was like, wow, that's, it's very important to have that, to like have. Yeah,
no, 100%. Yeah. It's having recent projects, and also not just recent projects, but sort of ideas in the locker that are ready to go. So because people always want to know what's next, or what can you do, or what are you going to work on next that I can maybe help with, or that you could maybe pitch to me, and it's sort of having that mixture of things that you've completed and things that you are aiming for. So there's a sense of motion, I suppose, in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, like, one of the biggest questions you always get is like, what's next? And Michael and I would sometimes be like, what do you mean what's next? We just made a movie and sold it. Like, but then at the same time, it is like
holiday.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it is like, it is, like, what's next? Because people might want to work with you. People might want to get to know you more. And so I do think that I just don't think that there is such thing as wasted time or wasted energy, because everything is going to go towards your end goal, which is to make movies as much as possible,
100%. It's amazing to sort of hear this film you've done on this scale. I know that, for some of our listeners, they're going to be sort of dreaming in the same way that 8-year-old you was, dreaming of sort of being a film producer. You've done lots of shorts as well, right? As a producer, I wonder what do you find was like the biggest difference? Sort of, obviously, there's this wider world that you're sort of that you've shared with us in terms of the festivals, the pitching, and distribution and stuff. But in terms of like actually being on set, what sort of was the difference between the earlier stuff you did and something of this scale? Does it still feel like the same thing?
Sometimes. I mean, it depends. So like the first projects I ever made on like kind of a larger scale, where, there's like a whole crew and there's a whole cast and you have like a pre-production process, was in college. And so we would make, short films, and some of them did like really well. It was like shocking. Like they went to a lot of festivals and they did very well. And you're sort of like, this is crazy. Like I'm a teenager.
Yeah.
And so those are just the greatest learning opportunities, as long as you don't take it seriously. I mean, I would always like tell the people I was like, working on these with, this isn't life and death. Like it's just not.
Yeah.
Like, and so we're gonna make mistakes, and they're gonna go wrong. They are. I can promise you, I'll bet money on it that things are gonna go wrong, and we just have to kind of deal with it as it comes up. And the other thing I would tell people, especially in college, was people would sometimes make really massive mistakes. And I would always tell them, like, you know what, you didn't know.
Like not turning the camera on, or like...
Well, it'd be like, I worked on this one project that I had come in later, and I arrived on the set, and it turns out they didn't have a shot list, which is just like a list of the shots that you're going to film. They didn't have that. They didn't think that they needed it. They didn't have like a schedule at all. Like, I don't know how they were planning on executing this, but they like had no schedule. They had no shot list. They didn't have like a budget. They just had sort of a bank account with money in it. And which are,
that's one tick. You that's useful.
Yeah.
But it's not a vision.
Yeah. And then on the other side of it, which was the actual massive mistake, because they didn't do these little things of planning, they kind of mistreated the crew, where the crew was working much longer hours than they should have. And they weren't properly fed. And it was just all these things. And I remember I was meeting with those producers, and I said, you know what? Like, you didn't know. Like, you're not a bad person. This is a learning curve. You didn't know, but now you do know. So now it is your fault. Like, now moving forward, it is your fault, because you if it happens know, again. But it wasn't before. And so I think that like it's important to take that pressure off of like, if you learn something that you just didn't know, and you can't beat yourself up for not knowing. You just have to be like, great, I know that now. Now I'm not going to make those mistakes. And so in the early phases, as we were saying in the beginning of this, you're going to make so many just massive mistakes. I mean, you are. And if you have like a good post-mortem where you sort of journal about it or you think about it, you're not going to make those mistakes again. And then sort of later on, my sophomore year of college, my friends and I started filming overseas. We filmed a documentary in Zambia, which was really fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that was a short film, but we did film for a month out there. But the ending film, I think, is like 14 or 16 minutes long. And so it did start requiring like more stamina, because a lot of short films are filmed in 2 days. So now we're like, okay, well, now we're filming for like a month. Now we have to, kind of build this stamina. But there didn't have to be a stamina of story. Like we could waste an entire week of shooting and not get anything. And it didn't matter, because the ending film was only going to be 14 minutes. And so it was sort of like, okay, great. Like we'll get something next week. And we did end up only using 1 week of footage. Only 1 week was usable. And because again, learning curve. And so, but it was fine, because it was a short film, and it was the same. We lived on a boat out in the middle of the ocean at one point for a different film for 10 days. And it was like a similar thing where we were like, okay, now we have to build up our stamina, but the stamina of story, we don't, because whatever we capture, we are going to edit down being very small. And then we had our first feature, which was 8 Billion Angels, which was like, I did it with the same team. I was doing all these shorts. I was doing a lot of stuff in college with, and for the first time ever, we had this very daunting moment of like, we have to fill 90 minutes of interesting stuff. And we can't have something unfold.
Shots of people staring out of windows.
Yeah. And we like can't have like a story start and end in 15 minutes. Like whatever we start at hour 10 has to kind of go through until like, you know, the last minutes of the film. And all of a sudden now you have to build a stamina of story where you're like, you have to keep thinking of ideas, and whatever you shoot has to be used because you have to fill the time. And so it does become more, and also on the side note, and this is something that people don't think about a lot, but I think about all the time, when you're making a short and you're watching it through, you know, as you're editing it, you watch it through like multiple times a day, but it's something like 10 minutes long. But when you're filming it, like editing a feature, you have to dedicate like 2 hours of your time to watch it through and make sure it's working.
I know.
And so it is like,
I know.
It's different. It's different in that way.
It is. It can be tiring, especially when you get right to the end as well, and you're just trying to check that it all works together. And, you know, if you're making small changes, you still need to watch them in the wider context of the film, and like whether it's messing up, you know, your rhythm and stuff. You know, that playback time really does start to scale up exponentially.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And that was something that was surprising to me. Like, I never thought about that until I started working in features. And I was like, oh, because it'd be like sort of the end of the day and you're like, I just want to watch it really fast, make sure it's okay. But with a feature, you're like, okay, can we dedicate 2 hours? Can we just make sure that it's all working right now? Friday at 8 p.m.
Oh, that's your evening. You know?
And
100%.
So that's definitely, and there's it would just take so much more planning because, in terms of story, like it just takes so much more planning because you have to keep it interesting for that amount of time. Almost anything can be interesting for like 5 minutes. So it's much harder.
So it's just knowing really, I suppose. Yeah, your idea, I suppose, you know, it needs to be a feature idea, right? It needs to be a story that is going to, you know, you can't, sometimes it's hard to sort of get a rolling pin and roll a short out into a feature, because, you know, ultimately like that story is just it might not be a big enough story. And if you are going to adapt, I suppose, then it's finding out what is that bigger story hidden there rather than just sort of stretching it out, because otherwise I think, you know, certainly the filmmakers are going to have an awful time as you're you know, sitting there Friday night at 8:00 trying to watch our film that we've sort of rolling pinned out into 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's a conversation I have with a lot of directors, especially new directors that are sort of getting into shorts for the first time and stuff. I usually tell them that like you should work on shorts, especially once you get to a certain point in your career. You've maybe made 1 or 2 shorts.
Yeah.
And you're starting to consider going into festivals and trying to sort of make a name of yourself. You should only really be making shorts that can become features, because that is what people are going to ask of you. Like once you arrive at the festival and people are talking to you, they're going to ask like, do you have a feature script of this? And I do suggest that by the time you get to the festival that you do have the feature script ready to go or at least like a packet or something. And then the other thing I tell them is your feature script most likely is not your short film that lasts 90 minutes. Your short film is going 100%. To be the first act of your feature, potentially, maybe one scene of the feature. And then you're going to have to build out a much larger story kind of around it. And I think a very good example that I really love to point people towards is one of my favorite shorts, which is called Thunder Road, which was made by Jim Cummings. It's a short film about a funeral, and it's a one shot of a guy delivering a eulogy for his mom at her funeral. And it's so emotional. And I know that Jim wrote it in his car. I do know Jim, so I did get like a lot of backstory of it, which is really wonderful. But he didn't write it like in his car where he just like turned on his voice memo and just started rambling, and then just pretty much wrote word for word whatever he rambled. And that became a short film.
Pretty fast first draft.
And people loved it, and they really wanted it to be a feature, and he really wanted it to be a feature. And people sort of being like, is it going to be like a bunch of eulogies? Is it going to be like, what's the feature going to be? And he was like, no, this is the first scene of the feature. The feature is about him over like getting through the death of his mom, and like, who is he, and like the relationship with his daughter, and like it's going to be about his world, and the eulogy is just the setup.
He's a cop, right? In the film, is he a police officer? Yeah. No, I haven't seen it. I'm really excited to though.
Yeah,
it seems like a fantastic film. But yeah, that's definitely a huge. Yeah, that's such an impressive expansion of that scene, really. I mean, that's amazing advice, I think, for filmmakers, for writers as well, that maybe have a film that gets into festivals. But we're going to sadly have to draw it to a close. So I just want to turn that advice sort of focus maybe away from filmmakers and towards yourself. Obviously, I know 8-year-old you already knew that what you wanted to do, which I think is amazing and has really sort of allowed you to focus and learn and put yourself into the position you're in. But I wondered if you had any advice that you would give to your teenage self as she embarks on this journey.
I would say to further embrace the collaborative nature of filmmaking and get notes early and often. Because I think that, especially when I was young, and I see it with some people, like when I was young, I was so shy, and I would, end up making claymations because I was just so nervous about asking anybody to be in any of my movies. And if I did ask someone to be in the movie, I would put so much pressure on myself to, like, it has to be good because now someone else is involved, And I realized that people, like, it's collaborative and people want to work with you. And so I think just embracing the social aspect of that and just being like, we both want to be here. And I think the other side of that is just getting notes on stuff. Like when you've written something, don't wait for it to be perfect to show off, and give notes. I tend to, when I write something, I'll only have the first act done and I'll already be getting notes because I'm like, okay, is this good? Like, or do you like the set and the setting? Are the characters interesting? Like, do you like what this is setting up? And sometimes the answer is, oh, no, I don't. And now I'm like, great, like I can go.
No, I do not.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, now I can go in and fix this. And a teacher one time told me that the first act is laying the train tracks. And if you start crooked, your whole script is going to be crooked. So I think it's just, filmmaking is collaborative. So the earlier you embrace that, the earlier you get notes, the earlier you start working with people and developing that skill of working with people and accepting criticism and accepting notes and not accepting people being mean. Like if someone's like, your script's bad and you're a bad writer, don't accept that. That's not, but if they're like, your pacing is, it's a little slow. I would love for you to get to things faster. I mean, that's a pretty valid note. And sometimes someone will give a note that has nothing to do with your movie. And I always tell people, still write that note down because they're not understanding something. Like if they're like, but why is her dad dead at all? Why isn't he just like a clown? You have to pause and be like, what about my script made them think that it was viable, And so I think it's just, you have to divorce your ego from it and just see it as like, I want to communicate. So are people understanding what I'm communicating? And it's just that. And then it's just practice beyond that.
Katya, that's such good advice. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That is so cool to listen to the sort of producing end of filmmaking, which again, like, it's always that sort of so many fingers and so many pies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was just really struck by how she really saw we talked a little bit about it in another episode, this sort of idea of whether you need to be a specialist or whether you need to be a generalist. Yeah. And obviously there are particular skills in which you can and should specialize depending on the department that you work in. But she really proves, having dipped her toes in all of those different areas, that just really strengthens her abilities as a producer.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, we should say welcome to the show, Amelia. Of course, just like the voice is
here
drifting
I am.
in.
I have floated in on a cloud.
For those that were getting sort of anxious or like starting to like itch their skin, don't worry. She is here. She is ready to reflect.
I am ready to reflect.
You just got back from the dentist, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that's why my voice sounds weird. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, and it was nice to listen to. It's nice to listen to Katya as well. Another American voice on the podcast. I was loving.
Absolutely, our first overseas.
I love our first overseas guest. We got to get some more of those. I'm thinking we got to find somebody in 100%. Nigeria to talk to. Talk about Nollywood. That would be superb.
But
anyways, that would be great. Katya.
Anyway, So you're saying generalist or specialist? I mean, I found Katya so impressive because she seemed like a special generalist.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean?
Specialized generalist.
Yeah, like knows so much about all these different things rather than just it's not just a I know a bit of everything. She knows lots of everything. And that is, I mean, that's surely just the best position you can put yourself in, regardless of whether you want to be a producer, so you want to wear all those hats, or if you want to be specialized in a particular department. The better you understand and can talk to every other department, the more successful you're going to be in the long term.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's again, if I'm pulling a word out of the corporate world, it's called cross-training. But research does prove that it makes teams stronger. So, that I think it's quite evident, based on the way she spoke and her training and her background. Just the story she told, just the success of the film itself really demonstrates, right, that kind of approach works because the film was received so well. They got distribution immediately. She was really, her experience kind of demonstrates that cross-training, that ability to understand all perspectives is only going to make your experience better, probably more positive, and the film itself stronger in the end.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. I think, you want to be. This is what's cool about the YFA courses, to be fair, is that they give you a chance to sort of explore. It sounds like a shameless plug, but like sincerely,
no, absolutely.
They give you a chance to explore everything and try everything because you might. This is why people often start off wanting to be either a director or an actor because those are the most visible two roles, right? It's either the people in front of camera or the immediate person behind the camera, as it were. But then you discover all these things. You get a chance. You find out what you want to do, but then you can actually, as you're saying, cross-train and become successful in that.
Yeah. And shameless plugs aside, I do really believe in our approach because there are, we have a lot of students come to us or parents, contact us and say, my kid's really interested in acting. And, until you get to summer camp, we don't specialize on our courses. We want everybody to be a generalist. We want everyone to learn how to be behind the camera and in front of the camera so that they can, learning about what goes on behind the camera only makes you a better actor, full stop. And having to be in front of the camera, even if you don't love that, really does, again, give you a different perspective to the work that you do behind it. If you decide, actually, I tried to be an actor in one film when I was 12 and I hated it, but at least you knew then what it was like to be in front of the camera. And that will make your work as a grip or a focus puller just better because you will have that empathy, that understanding of the other person in the other shoes.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Lastly, we do have a question from a listener. This question is from Jess. Jess is 13. Jess is actually already interested in producing, which is pretty cool.
Love that.
Sort of a young Katya here. But she wants to know if there's any books or reading she can do about producing movies. I'll be honest, off the top of my head, I don't know if I've read a single one, but I can Google live on air. I don't know.
We should have asked Katya that question if we could have.
We should have done. This would be so good if we were just like, a tiny bit more prepared. I mean, a quick Amazon search. There's a book called Producing and Directing the Short Film and Video. What? That doesn't even sound like correct English. But it's got 50 reviews, Jess. So maybe that one. This is the worst answer we've ever given on the Young Film Academy podcast. Normally we would give much better answers. But the reality is, I think, if we just think of the cross-training thing, to be a good producer, go and practice producing movies. If there's directors that want to make films in your school, maybe you can produce their films. Otherwise, direct them as well. Teach yourself the entire ins and outs, and why not read the best books on everything? So Save the Cat is a great book to learn about screenwriting. There's a book, I think it's called Sound Design, about sound design, that's really good. There's a book called, I think, Cinematic Motion, which is great for cinematography. Read the specialist books and become a specialized generalist, which seems to be
absolutely. And also, I think that Katya's point to that, obviously, if you like reading and you want to read books, I'm not going to disabuse you of reading. Definitely read. But her experience, right, in dipping her toes into all those different areas is what helped her become the strong producer she is. So go find some work as a runner on a set, be the PA that gets the coffees, because you'll be able to soak in so much just from being there that will help you on your journey. Yeah,
being a producer actually there's quite a nice path to it. Obviously, at a certain point, you're going to have to start producing stuff and maybe taking some gambles with the projects you're going to be a lead producer on. But there is such an opportunity with producing. You can genuinely start as a runner, move into AD department, move into production managing, and you are going to be on the inside of that production in terms of the skeleton of making that production happen. And that is such a nice, clear path to producing. That is a bit clearer than some other departments like directing, when like ADing doesn't qualify you to be a director, only directing does. Whereas producing, learning and understanding each of those roles, you can work your way up. There is a slightly more ladder way of doing it, especially in the world of television.
And as Katya said, right?
Put you in a good position.
And as she said as well, there's not always a very defined there's not always a great definition of what a producer is and what they do. And you had that great conversation about the difference between a co-producer and an associate producer. And she was telling the story of being on a set and someone saying, you've overstepped, that's not your job. And she was saying, that's literally my job, So I think that's the other thing is understanding that there is a kind of flexibility in these sort of roles. And as Dan says, getting in on any part of that production team is going to help you on your journey towards becoming a producer, if that's your goal.
Yeah, 100%. Amelia, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
I've loved to parachute in for this little bit of a conversation. Thank you so much, Dan.
Well, thank goodness the dentist went well, is all I can say. And it's been a treat. See you guys soon.